Today we are honored to welcome Pedro Wunderlich to the show today. I'm very excited to have him on. He is the founder of the number one fitness app in 2020. He has some amazing expertise in terms of fitness that I'm really excited to get into, and some very important concepts that you don't hear a whole lot about in terms of like difference between exercise and movement and everything that is really required for the mindset to have a life of fitness. So it's really what it's all about, sustainability. And very happy to have him on today. How are you doing, man?
Doing fantastic, Anthony. Really happy to be here, man. Can't wait to share some
Absolutely.
concepts to your audience that hopefully will change their lives and their relationship with movement in the same way that we've done with hundreds of thousands of people through our app.
Sounds great. Yeah, so I'm very curious to hear your story, how you got into fitness, and how you kind of got into that avenue of service as well.
Yeah, so my relationship with fitness, as with most people, with a lot of people, started when I was a teenager. And it was all based on vanity and attracting the opposite sex. This was a very utilitarian relationship with fitness. I work out, I lift weights, I become hot. Now people look at me, and it is a sort of preparation of a product, a bodily product for the sale in the social marketplace, essentially. So this superficial sort of relationship with fitness, it was perhaps very motivating when I was a teenager. But further in life, I realized that that same relationship, that vain, superficial, looking hot for others sort of relationship, became toxic and venomous for a, let's say, a broader desire to live a full life, not just look at me, because ultimately the person that is really looking at me is me. And that was the biggest issue that I had, and where I realized this needs to change.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, I still think it's such a pervasive thing. Like, people want to work out in order to look good, right? We don't understand there's so much more to it than that. We get so much more benefits and we just feel so much better in our lives. And it's a very important concept to actually understand.
I like, so now you're talking about feeling better. That emotion is very interior. It is very personal. So when I feel better, it is more of a spiritual sort of emotion that you're describing. You're not describing specifically, my knee feels better, or my sense of health feels better. It sounds like you're describing a feel better that is more holistic and more lasting. Excuse me. So that is precisely where we're attacking the problem, is about feeling better, but more so in an elevation sort of sense. You want to become that kind of person that movement is natural to you, because movement does something to the body that feels right. Not, I am satisfying a prerequisite for society. I am not looking for validation. I feel guilty and therefore I need to work because I need to work out. You hear this all the time, right? Every single uncle of mine tells me, I need to work out more. Oh man, and they'll rub their bellies in a circular movement, which is pretty much the only movement they do during the day, is rub their bellies, and they'll be like, man, I really need to move more. What do you recommend, man? And I'll ask them, why do you want to move more? And I was like, oh, this belly. And I'll be like, what's wrong with the belly? And they'll be like, my wife, man, she doesn't like the belly. You see the cycle. This is precisely where I'm going at. This might be a very simple and reductionist concept, but what he's saying is an external validation. What he's saying is that belly is not gratifying to him because of someone else. Now, that is where I see the angle. When we change that perception specifically, man, the relationship with movement becomes natural and immediate. It's not for someone else, it is for me. And that's where I see the instant change.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense, man. Like, Because we're looking to this external validation, but it's not really going to be sustainable. Like when we actually do it for like the right reasons, like when times get challenging or life happens, right? But if we have that strong reason and that is aligned with what is real, it's going to be more sustainable in the long term.
Sustainability is the exact point here for true, not just a habit, because we in the fitness industry everybody talks about habits. You either got the habit or you do not have the habit of exercising. You see the problem there. Clearly, it is not a sort of possession in that sense. Movement shouldn't even be a habit. Movement should be almost like what food is to hunger for the body. The body yearns for movement, you see. That's where we find the big lie of fitness, man. The big lie of fitness is you have to exercise. You have to go to the gym. You need to earn your ability to look good in the mirror and for others. You need to earn your privilege to feel good inside your body. You need to earn the validation of others to look good in freaking yoga pants. It is always a systematic attack on what the body actually requires from movement, and it is a sort of natural satiation like nutrition, but for its own sake and not for anybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any common barriers that you see to an on ramp to fitness, right? Because like it can kind of difficult to develop this mindset if we're kind of like that's all we know is validation. That's all we kind of think about. I feel like it can be sort of a process in a sense. Do I have that right?
It could be a process, but what I've seen is more of a once the mental shift happens, it is essentially instantaneous. We have, I have users that have performed, they perform 40 exercises during a day. They've completely replaced drinking coffee, for example, for movement. They just find it more energizing. They just find it. We have stories, wild stories of people that once they change their mindset of what movement is, the change is immediate. So that's why I want to challenge you on the concept of a process, because it almost sounds like, again, you said an on-ramp. When you talk about a process, it is a learning curve. It requires immense effort. It requires a lot of discipline. It requires a sort of forceful relationship with yourself. We're doing this no matter what, because this is a process. Respect the process. In the common barrier, so your question was common barriers. First and foremost, one of the biggest common barriers is thinking that this learning curve that exists needs to be removed. You don't need to learn how to move, for example. You don't need to learn how to properly do a bicep curl. You don't need to learn how to properly do a squat. What I'm talking about is a return to a natural movement with the body. Your body already knows how to move. We've essentially taken movement and we commercialized and made it very specific. The bicep curl, the squat, the chest press, the shoulder press, the ab crunches. These things are commercial movements. These are not part of natural movement. You don't see in natural environments, we're not doing bicep curls. Like when somebody, for example, somebody's working in their carpentry studio in their garage, they're not doing bicep curls, but they're getting a hell of a workout. When somebody is cleaning the house, they're not performing bicep curls, with a couple of toilet rolls. They're not doing bicep curls with the laundry basket. They're just moving about. And this is very gratifying to the body without even thinking about movement. So that's one of the first barriers that I would challenge your audience to try and remove from themselves, is the thinking that there is a certain requirements for this process to begin. The temple, the movement temple, the gym membership is what I call the sacrosanct movement temple, not needed. The gym clothing, not needed. The special supplements, not needed. Maybe not yet. We might want them later, but this is separate to the whole concept of becoming a person that moves. You want to remove the whole, how do I move? Go out for a walk, start cleaning the house, and start paying attention to how your own body moves. You see the point? There is we need, instead of, the barriers are a sort of, how you call it, a sort of costume, a sort of social costume that we are wearing in order for us to match the expectations of what it is to exercise. We need to remove this costume with all its prejudices and just listen to the body and pay attention to how our body uniquely moves. No matter your age, no matter your physical challenges, everybody has them. Some people can't really pick up things up. That's fine. Some people can't fully squat. The famous ass to grass. Many people can't do ass to grass. That's fine. Some people can't raise their arms fully above their heads. All these are limitations that you listen to, and you just move your body naturally. You see what I mean? You start shedding all these preconceptions before you want to start moving.
I love it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like movement is inherent in us. You kind of alluded to a little bit. It's like having the foundations, say like nutrition example, like there's certain foundations that you need to do, right? It sounds like the same thing with movement, right? It's like just being fluid throughout the day in a sense. And then of course we can customize and add on to that. Do I have that right?
Precisely. What we do is essentially, we feel like what we built with our app is a sort of gateway drug into movement, where we return the person's relationship with their body and with movement into a natural state. Once that happens, the app is basically optional, because what we're doing is we are just kind of like setting the machine in motion. You see, a body in motion is more easily provoked to further motion. That's why, for example, I rarely stand up. I rarely sit down is what I want to say. I rarely sit down. I'm always standing up. I sit down to rest, but my default state is movement at all times, because there is a profound relationship between the being easily provoked into movement and being easily provoked into action. They're almost synonymous, movement and action. Now, consider this. If you're easily tempted into further movement, and if you're easily tempted into further action, that also implies other kinds of actions, because pretty much all our interaction with the world requires the manifestation of the body. The body needs to extend itself towards action. So, for example, you have a task. You really need to clean up your room. That is movement. And this task has been weighing on you. But if you are in constant movement, then the moment the task appears, it is natural. You proceed to that one task. Oh, how about this other task? Oh, I really need to call the plumber. There's an issue with the movement proceeds. The phone call is physical. There is a physical extension. That is physical as well. Next thing, oh, I really need to send that email. That is movement as well. So action feeds into further action. And what you become is this sort of being that is always in constant movement. You see?
Absolutely, yeah. It sounds like living a life of flow, essentially, because a lot of us were just in a sedentary state. And metaphorically, we're probably not taking a whole lot of action in our lives, right? And or at least we're not taking action on certain things that are really important to us. I find that just kind of like having this forward momentum in your life, and everything is connected. Like if you're not moving, then it's hard to have that generative in your life.
You hit the nail right on the head, man. This state of flow, but a flow with the physical, with your environment, with yourself. There is always an easy provocation. You stand up easily, you move. Notice that what is old age? Old age is essentially the slow decline into less and less movement, is essentially old age. Versus at a young age, you could say, I'm not talking about how old you are. I'm talking about your age in movement. Look at a child. They cannot, for the life of them, stay sitting down. Challenge a child. I tried it with my daughter. You tell them, sit down, please. Can you sit down? Can you sit down? Anybody that tries to wrestle a child into sitting down is a exercise in futility. They will be standing up before you even finish the sentence. This is amazing, remarkable, and something to learn, not to oppress. The child that wants to move is telling us something. Their relationship with the world is expansive because they move, they explore, they're feeling their bodies, they're listening to their bodies. That's why we say movement is growth. The more you move, there is a sort of relationship. The more you move, the more action that is performed in your life, which means the more things happen in your life, which tends to lead to growth. So there is this clear relationship, you see?
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. Makes a lot of sense. So we talked a little bit about a difference between exercise and movement. But now if people are kind of like, what should I do in terms of movement? What would that look like throughout the day? Are there certain things that we should do? Like, is it walking? Like, what are your thoughts?
I love that. The first thing that I would say to anybody, this is exactly what we say when we talk to our customers one-to-one, is I ask them, what does your body want? This is a question people don't ask themselves, again, because we've externalized movement. We call it exercise, and exercise is a sort of commercialized thing that belongs in a gym. So I asked them, what does your body want? Maybe they've lost their relationship with their bodies. They've stopped listening, or they've suppressed that yearning so deeply. But oftentimes they say, they'll think about it for a moment and they'll be like, it wants to walk. It wants to walk around. And I'll say, yes, then start doing that. And they'll start walking. Walking it depends on the person. Again, Anthony, I really want to emphasize that movement is deeply personal and individualized. That's why that's why I hate the bicep curl, this universalization of the movement. No, we need to return it to the individual. So in this case, what is movement to you? And they'll tell me, walking, I love walking. Yeah, it seems like walking really feels nice. And they start walking. Then they'll be like, I really enjoy cleaning the house, mopping. So there's that movement. Or how about this, dancing? Some people really enjoy dancing. Dancing is a joy for some people. That's another thing. You don't need permission to dance. You don't have to be at a party to dance. Just hit the music, get a little bit of movement in, enjoy yourself. It feels good. And you start discovering, and what I would say is, you start regaining your relationship with your body. Eventually, for example, this happens to me. I get a sort of a sudden urge to do torso twists. You know these torso, just like twisting your torso side to side. I'll be just hanging out and it'll be like, excuse me. And I do this in public, by the way. Everybody that knows me are like, okay, there goes Pedro again. But I'll just stand up in the middle of a restaurant. I don't care, man. Just like enjoying a little bit of torso twists because this is the yearning that I have. I love doing squats. So for me, like ass to grass, like really deep, what they call Indian squats. It's like really deep, like get in between your knees, your pelvis is down to the floor, sort of position, and I just hold it for as long as I can. There is almost, I could say, one of the top 10 pleasures of my life is getting into that deep squat, pelvis to the floor. That feels great to me. But for example, if I observe my daughter, she is just obsessed with running. Maybe all kids are, but they'll just sprint away like, all the time. They're just running, and I just encourage her. I love it when I see it, like, you go, girl. My wife, she's a hiker. That's her thing. It's not about exercise. She loves to go into the mountains. So you see, it's highly individualized, and I would never say or prescribe here are the top 5 movements you're supposed to be doing. No, because I have confidence that movement generates more movement. And whoever starts listening to their bodies first and starts moving naturally, they will eventually be performing more complex and more sophisticated, more movements that involve more of the body. You see, so there is no one answer for the ideal movement for anybody.
I love it, man. So it sounds like intuitive movement, listening to your body, what you actually need. Also, it's kind of like certain like nutrient inputs, right? What do you need? But from a physical standpoint, what are the movement inputs that you need specifically? And just thinking about these things and giving like a variety of movements throughout the day can be very beneficial.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, some people will say, for example, this is the typical cubicle productivity hustler that has tight neck, right? Tight neck, just tight shoulders. Your body's telling you something, right? The tight neck, the shoulders. That is a prescription. The body is yelling, it is requesting something. And then they can start performing and start experimenting, raising the shoulders, stretching the neck, maybe doing that. Once they realize that feels good, they can start doing it preemptively because they know the body already hungers for these sort of movements. Next thing you know, they got rid of the neck stiffness. They got rid of the shoulder. I've seen this in many testimonials. I know this for a fact. No prescription needed. No PT was needed. It just happened naturally.
Yeah.
But it is listening to the body's signals. It has to happen this way. I know people that start feeling the backache start creeping in years before it becomes chronic. Years before. It takes years of negligence to reach a point where you now need professional help. I'm not going to deny the professional help, of course, but the body has surely been screaming and desiring movement for years before things become chronic. You see, so that's why it's really important.
100%. I feel like the problem is we have a lot of static online, right? We're so distracted by the external world that we're not really attuned with our physical cues in a sense, right? And that in itself, it's like just being more in tune can be very beneficial, right? But how do we get there is a question.
Anthony, you see, the modernity really is the enemy. I'm not saying let's tear the whole thing down. It has huge benefits, but modernity is really the enemy of health in many ways. They're talking about the mental health epidemic. They'll talk about the sitting epidemic. All of this is a symptom of modernity. The more comfortable life becomes, the sicker we are. And it is precisely because we start disconnecting ourselves from our body. Notice how even social media works. Social media requires you to create a sort of avatar of yourself, outside yourself, that lives and it has its own personality online. Your Instagram account is not really Anthony. It's somebody else, right? It has its own identity, its own filters, its own look and feel. I'm not saying, maybe using Anthony, I don't even know you in that way, but many people that use Instagram, they've externalized themselves and they idealize that individual, that person, that avatar of themselves online. It already requires that disconnection, that push away, that interaction with a version of yourself almost as an intermediary towards the world. You see, so how that is creating a chasm between ourselves, our idealized self, and who receives the most attention is the idealized self. The validation, the likes, the comments. And then the next morning, that person has to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, who am I? Am I that? Am I this? Eventually, and this, in my belief, is the source of anxiety and depression, is when you've severed your identity and you cannot no longer identify who you are.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to sound like I've changed the subject. I have not. It is still the body. You see, the connection with the body is returned when we start listening to the body, and especially when we deny external validation, when we deny being pushed towards certain behaviors through guilt or validation or some sort of external authority. And so this was the long way of getting to the answer of your question. You said, how do we get there? How do we get there? We got in modernity, which is this immense, almost godlike presence in our lives. It is everywhere, anywhere, all at once. Yes? Modernity. Pulling us away from ourselves. The way we get there is essentially lessening our relationship with modernity and increasing our relationship with our body. Now you can say, okay, you can be, of course, skeptical about this concept because it still requires an initial desire to want to reconnect with the body. That is a challenge. How do we create the desire for someone to want to be more connected with themselves before the desire arises? I would have to challenge you there and say maybe some people, or maybe most people, will never get there. And as soon as modernity came, almost like a sort of enslaver that took us away from our bodies, and most people said, thank you, because I have nothing else. I am empty inside. So I would say we cannot create the desire. The desire will likely already be there in some people. To those people, we need to reach them and then teach them some sort of methodology. I do have a methodology that I might be able to share with your audience, but that's the point. Is I'm not entirely convinced that we can actually create the desire in people. Whether the seed has to be in there.
Yeah, it makes sense. It sounds like living more in alignment, right? It's like also being more resilient overall in your life, right? Just the desire to change in a sense. It's like we're so used to comfort, as you mentioned. We have like all these things, and we're just kind of soft, right? It's like we want to build that grit and determination and like kind of that internal fire to create change in our own lives.
I love that you use internal fire. You know, that really is a concept that I use all the time. The internal fire, to me, is almost like this furnace that spews out its smoke is the body's wisdom, something like that. It's a sort of like signals, smoke signals that are being expelled from my internal fire. The internal fire, what does it feed on? What is its fuel? That is a question that we all need to answer. It is highly individualized in everybody. What drives me, what turns on my fire is different than what does Anthony or what does anybody else. That fire, when you said alignment, you also said something essential. When you align that internal fire, for example, with the desire to move, and you say, my fire will feed also movement, and they will be aligned. The reasons behind movement will be similar, or they will orchestrate together with my inside fire. That's where, man, movement becomes spiritual at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like aligning with your purpose in a sense, and that's where the wisdom comes from. Like when you align mind, body, and spirit, it's like you're on point and you're just kind of ready for life, and it's such a fun place to be.
Exactly, man. Let's for a moment consider that you said your purpose. Again, another one of those heavy words. Purpose, again, I believe you discover or you define your purpose inside of you, within your body. Again, returning to the body is where you find and you listen to your inner fire. That inner fire will instruct you towards where the purpose should go. That flaming fire helps you create and define your own purpose. That purpose becomes essential for redefining your reasons to do anything, especially things that require a sort of effort, like movement, like a new entrepreneurship, like writing that book you've been wanting, or reading that Dostoevsky novel for a while that you've been looking at and you can't even start on the first page because there is a lack of alignment and purpose, man. So here's the prior state that I believe is required. Movement is also, and I'm not the first to say this, many people have said this, movement is how the body thinks. Movement, and that's not just metaphorical, man. There are numerous studies where they've found that the brain probably evolved itself and built itself into such a complex structure, first and foremost, in order to process the complexities of being an upright animal, walking on two legs, the complexity of the machine required to operate on two legs and to still be able to use your hands and move around and carry heavy things and be in constant rebalancing required the most sophisticated machinery ever evolved in planet Earth. So movement and processing are directly tied. So if we want to think better, and if you look into this, Anthony, almost all geniuses throughout history, what do? They walk. They walk. When they need to clear their minds, they walk. From Einstein to Steve Jobs to Friedrich Nietzsche, they all walk for miles every day in order to process. Walking, for some reason, just does something to the clarity of the mind. When I really need to think about, for example, a new feature, a new idea, a new entrepreneurship, a new a campaign that I go out for a walk. I go out for a walk. There is a famous thinker that said, distrust any idea that did not come while you were walking. This is very telling. This is very telling. So if you want to, again, you're talking about purpose, you're talking about fire, you're talking about concepts that are broad and important and essential for existence. Movement has to precede anything of that sort before you want to define it. This is my opinion and my practice that I've discovered in myself. The clarity of mind, the clarity of ideas. The more I move, the more they come to me, man. It's almost like I love to lift weights as well. I love calisthenics, lifting weights. I love all kinds of movement, stretching, calisthenics specifically, just body movement, body weight. Love it. That's where most of my ideas come from. A lot of people talking about modernity. And look, I don't want to sound like a grandpa, but people love to listen to podcasts when they're working out. I'm sure you probably see this in your stats. There's probably some relationship with workout time and podcast listening. Or traffic. Traffic is fine. But workout time, to me, it is time to silence the world. I want to listen to my body. That's my podcast, is listening what's in there. So when I'm working out, it really unlocks things, man. It is profound, the things that happen while I'm working out. So again, modernity here is creeping back in, stealing us from essential time with ourselves during our movement. I would say, if you're going, this again, everybody can do whatever they want. I want to individualize all experience, but I'm saying, when I walk, silence, man. When I work out, silence. Because I am in loud, busy conversation with my body. You see?
I love it, man. Yeah, it's like, you kind of mentioned, like, your purpose is not out there, it's in here, right? Something that you kind of like find within. And also, it's like something I think about is the mind is kind of consciousness, right? And our consciousness exists in our bodies as well. So developing that physical literacy, right? That body intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's a way that you think and ways you process information. Think of it as a form of intelligence as well.
I do think of it. The body is a physical intelligence. Now, look, Anthony, I want to challenge you there for a moment. You mentioned the mind, you mentioned the body, and you made them sound like they're two different things. And I want to challenge you. This is of course, a deep philosophical question that has been wrestled for millennia: the mind-body dualism. But in my experience, when you consolidate the two, even the three, the third one being the soul, and you put them all together in this one single, beautiful meat and bones machine, which is the body, a singular mind or a singular soul, if you want to call it. We don't, in my opinion, we don't have a soul. We are a soul. We don't have a mind. We are a mind. As you said, a full body brain from feet to head. The entire thing is a sort of intelligence that is processing the world. It is understanding the world. It is extending itself towards the world. And it is also, when in terms of the soul, it is elevating itself. It is trying to, you said, feel good. Not just that, it's trying to find its place in the world. If this, again, I just want to say, in my opinion, because some people, when I deny the soul, it really gets their panties in a bunch. But I'm not denying the soul, and I'm not denying the mind. I'm just saying that they are all the same thing, including the subconscious, including which some people, I would say the subconscious is probably what some people would say is the soul. All of that put together, in my experience, ever since I've been processing things this way, things become more clear to me. My thoughts, not just my thoughts, but those interesting, weird thoughts that we get that seem to come from some sort of abyss, from some sort of deep inside the body. These things are louder, clearer, more informative when our relationship with our body is more of a unity, more of an integrated self. So I work out to feed the soul. I feed the soul to feed the mind, and the mind benefits from moving. You see, there's this sort of cycle and a proper relationship, which essentially to me becomes evident. The soul, the mind is the body. Because if I don't move, if I become stagnated, and this happens to me, and I've had periods in my life that have been very difficult, very tough, and oh, by the way, if you look at the relationship also with our state of mind, our mood, if we feel happy, we move more. When we feel sad, we move less. There is an interesting relationship. And I've tried this, I've tested this, to break the cycle of sadness. You try, it is very tough, I know, and it's very heavy, but you start moving a little bit more. You start moving just a little bit more than what the sadness is requesting. The sadness is denying life. And you say, no, I'm gonna move just a little bit. And you start, I'm not saying it removes sadness, but it does make it lighter. Perhaps more manageable, more understandable. But again, going back to the point, when I've had difficult points in my life, it is clear that I move less, and thus the voices in my head, the soul, the consciousness, the subconsciousness, the messages, they become harder to understand, more akin to a hurricane in a way. It almost becomes impossible to grasp a single thought because they're just passing by so fast. So yeah, the clarity of the mind, the consciousness, the soul, all one single thing. I don't know if you wanted to go this deep at this point, Anthony, but you mentioned consciousness and the mind as a separate, almost a separate thing. So I just had to challenge you there.
Absolutely, man. We're on the same page. I mean, it sounds like what we're talking about here is oneness, right? It's like,
Yes.
it's like how it's all connected in a sense, and just being aware of these things. It's really awesome because then we can kind of navigate that in an intelligent way, in a sense, right? It's just like understanding that they all influence each other, and
Correct.
it's like it's this wonderful synergy that you're explaining so well.
Correct. Yes. You see, that's why when people talk about fitness, it saddens me. When people talk about exercise, it saddens me. These two words already have a enormous built-in commercial and industrialized feel to them, in my opinion. The fitness is an industry. Fitness is a product. Fitness is almost a brand. Exercise is a thing you do at a special place. Exercise has become synonymous with a motorized, specific, standardized form of movement. Versus what you say, oneness. Oneness is movement. Movement is deeper than that, man. Movement encompasses all of life. Movement is the extension movement is when I play with my daughter. Movement is when I go out for a walk with my wife. Movement is playing ball with the friends. Or actually, even movement could be hanging out with the boys and play during board game nights, which is one thing I love. We actually so my friends know I'm obsessed with standing up. So we actually play in a tall, square, large table, and we're all standing up because and I'll tell you something. When we board game this way, the games become more intense. I've seen the relationship. When you're gaming, sitting down, it's more like a chill vibe. You know, everybody's like leaning back. A couple of drinks, people are hanging out, and the games are more chill. When we're standing up, they're more active, more competitive. It's just wild, what happens to the mind and the body when there is movement involved.
Yeah, very interesting, man. Something I was thinking about when you were talking about walking, I came across some data showing how it increases divergent thinking, which is basically how, like, if we're talking about a problem, a lot of us, we just focus on that problem in the same way. But this helps us look at it from different angles and look at other possible solutions that we may not be aware of. And that's just the power of movement in of itself.
That's, man, you named something that I experience every day. Whenever I have a challenge, a difficult problem, I go out for a walk. Whenever I feel like my thoughts have become constipated, I go out for a walk, and it frees it up. It frees it up. It's something I experience every day. Divergent thinking. That is great. That is really great. That is something I need to address more. but precisely. And it's not just walking has a certain rhythm to it. There is a difficulty, a challenge with walking, especially if you're walking in terrain that is uneven and requires rebalancing and paying attention to like when you're hiking, for example, in a natural space. Walking activates, I've noticed, it seems to activate the brain way more versus if you're just walking, say, on a flat surface. Or, sadly, on a treadmill, in the gym. You see how we've commercialized and industrialized the benefits of walking, because walking on a treadmill is automatic. It requires way less effort. You're not lifting your body, actually. The treadmill is actually moving for you. You're just raising your legs, essentially. The benefits are lost. And what else do people do with the gym and the treadmill? They're listening to something. They're maybe watching a movie. They'll put the iPad in front of them. But everything is a sort of automatic, mindless activity that happens versus actually walking the dogs, for example. Yeah. That whole thing really makes me feel this way that you described.
100%. We mentioned this a few times, like the difference between sitting and standing. Can you explain the potential effects of sitting that could be detrimental to the body?
Absolutely. I'll tell you both from a philosophical standpoint and from a health standpoint. These are beyond controversy at this point. When you sit down, metabolism starts winding down. Your heart rate goes down. Blood circulation drops. Oxygen in the extremities and in the head drops. Therefore, clarity of mind, clarity of thought drops. That sensation of brain fog, that feeling like you're no longer creative, physical fatigue, and even in the long term, sitting often is related to all-cause mortality. So prolonged sitting kills you. But this, of course, nobody takes seriously because we're all gonna die eventually. So if you tell somebody, hey, but sitting increases the risk of, nobody really processes death with an urgency versus telling somebody, for example, when you tell them, for example, you're gonna get fatter. That is more important to people than if you tell them you're going to die. For some reason, one is more urgent than the other. But alas, the marvels of human psychology. But look, philosophically, I've already expressed this before, sitting is the opposite of the action-prone status of standing. When you're sitting, it seems to me you're less willing. You're less open to the world. You're less ready for new action. You're less ready for new opportunity. There is a sort of stagnation and closing out and pushing away of the world. Of course, I'm talking about prolonged sitting. I need to be clear, Anthony. There's nothing wrong with having a sit to rest or watching a movie or enjoying a nice conversation or being on a date for a few hours. That's totally fine. I'm talking about the prolonged sitting of 12 hours a day for months. That level of sitting is, to me, a pushing away of life, of preferring to be in a sort of rigid and calcified state where whatever it is that is inside your little capsule is the final state. You've decided this is it. So that psychological state, to me, is even more important to defeat than the health angles that one can scream at people for hours. You know, they even said sitting is the new smoking. These things are useless to try to motivate somebody off the chair. More, to me, is when you talk to them about a sort of self improvement, in a sort of self overcoming a sort of growth. From that angle, I've noticed bigger change. than if you talk about the health outcomes.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like, as you mentioned, it's like having a balance of it, but also it's more so about, just kind of like this intelligent movement patterns that we have throughout the day that kind of lead to other things in our life. So it's just like how everything kind of cycles into, which we've been talking about. So
Yeah, definitely. Look, Anthony, I'd love to share something with your audience if we still have time.
absolutely.
And it is a methodology to change basically any behavior. But in this case, I'm going to exemplify it and I'm going to use it specifically for movement. But this method, I've found, is exceedingly powerful, almost should be illegal. No, I'm kidding. But it is extremely powerful. So we all know and have read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And it struck me as unlikely to work, despite him saying, his highly researched and the whole thing, and this is how habits are formed. But this system of cue, craving, response, reward is what he's saying, a cue, craving, response, reward. The problem I see with Mr. Clear's methodology is that it continues to require a external motivation. The cue is an external motivation. The cue, for example, he would cite, if you want to start working out more, then you should place your shoes and your gym clothing beside your bed, so that the act of working out more becomes a sort of accident. You trip over your shoes and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, maybe I should work out more. And then you put them on, and that somehow becomes a habit. Now notice the other thing. The cue, craving, response, reward cycle is a trick. It's a trick for the mind, because you're externalizing the motivation. You're placing a sort of a cue, as he calls it. You're placing what might trigger the desire, the supposed desire to perform an action. And then you reward yourself after that action as a treat, sort of tricking your brain with dopamine so that you can say, hey, I want to do this again. The brain knows and understands the tricks. It knows it's being bamboozled, and it will eventually reject and maybe even resist these efforts. So what I want to share with you is a method that, in my experience, in my observation, it is way more powerful. And it is not four steps: cue, craving, response, reward. It is actually 5 steps. But it, of course, requires a different kind of person. Not the kind of person that wants tricks and shortcuts, but the kind of person that is more introspective and is okay with a bit of challenge. But once unlocked, this is irrefutably more powerful. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first thing is, in this case, let's say movement, right? So if somebody wants movement. Somebody wants to move more. They say, I need to move more. I really need to move more. All right. The first step is to understand that want. You really need to understand that want. So how do you understand that want? First, you need to ask yourself, why do I want to move more? Where does this want comes from? Does this want come from a sense of obligation? This would be either validation, guilt, you're not meeting with requirements of somebody else's standards, or is it a true desire from within? You said your inner fire. Does it come from inside? If it is clear that it is a true want, a genuine desire of your own making, we proceed to step 2. We clean it up. Now we want to clean up the want out of all the external prejudices. You want to become the kind of person that refuses to act from a should, and you clean it up so that all this want possesses is the desire itself. How do we do that? Well, obviously, there's always external factors in our behavior. We are social animals, ultimately. You're going to take the want of moving more. And every time that desire comes and you start thinking about somebody else, do I look good in these pants? Oh, I look like an idiot right now when I move this way. All these thoughts, you shut them up. You shut them away, and you do this repeatedly every time they rise because you want to clean up the want so that it becomes this, it gives it more oxygen, and the fire just starts burning really hard. Once the want has been cleaned, sorry. Once you've cleaned up the want, now it's time to turn that want into action. I'm so sorry, man. Damn, dude.
No worries, man.
The worst possible moment. All right. No, I think I'm back. All right. Let's go to step 3. So once you clean up the want, you understand the want, and the want is clean, we want what I call sovereignty. You become your own commander and your own obeyer. You and only you command yourself and obey yourself. Notice, things no longer come from outside. They no longer come from an obligation or a guilt or a I should. It is you. And how do we do that? You start small. You start commanding yourself to something small. Let's go out for a walk around the block. That is a small command, a small ask. But notice that command comes from a worthy place because you've cleaned out all external sources. You've cleaned out the shoulds and the validations and the fakeness, and now it comes from a pure place. So it is a worthy commander. So you're more likely to obey him, and you'll say, yes, sir, I'll be right back. And you go out for a walk. Now the commander starts gaining more ability to command more complex things. How about we walk and then we try and sprint a little bit? And you say, yes, sir, because I trust you. I trust you, and I trust that you are commanding only things that will make sense. So what happens? Obedience becomes pleasurable. You enjoy obeying your own commands because they come from a real place of authenticity. Now, step 4. When performing the action, you discharge completely. You give yourself into the action completely. What does that mean? You stop tracking. Tracking is modernity. You're not closing your rings, man. You're not hitting a goal. You go out fully until your body tells you to, and you listen to your body. What does that mean? That might mean that you do less than you thought you would. You might have thought, I'm going to work out. It's going to be a 1 hour workout. You start performing the action. You really give into it. You're doing hard. And then 45 minutes in, your body's like, dude, we're good. We're good. Then you listen and you stop. Sometimes it might mean you go even longer. You hit the hour, you hit the 10 minutes, but it still feels right. You keep going, man. Because your body is asking for it. You're discharging completely. This fire inside of you, you're letting it burn. Your body will tell you when is enough. Trust me. That is how you return your relationship with your body. And then finally, step 5, after the action is complete, you do what I call incorporation. You reflect on the action. You reflect on the movement you just performed. You think about how it felt, how you obeyed, how good it felt to obey yourself and command yourself. You reflect on the fire burning inside of you, this want, and then finally, you think about the person you are becoming. Those things, I guarantee you, completely bypass the concept of habit formation because we're moving directly into a bullseye of self-becoming. That is more powerful and more important than tricks and rewarding yourself. And by the way, at this point, you don't even need the reward because the reward is the sense of growth and it is massive. But again, it presupposes this alignment that you said. Everything is, your entire body is celebrating that you fed a profound need inside your body that was yearning for nutrition and you gave it that nutrition. And damn, it feels good.
I love it, man. That's so powerful. It makes so much sense. Man, it's like, so understanding these frameworks can really change our lives, man. So I appreciate you sharing that.
That's awesome, man. No, man. I really hope it reaches somebody, and they'll put it to the test, and then they can tell us, and they can confirm or deny. They can tell me. I'd be happy to hear. This is all bullshit, man. You're talking philosophical nonsense. I'd love to hear that, and I would also like to hear if somebody finds it useful that they say, "Man, this changed my life. This really made me change behaviors."
Absolutely, man. All right. And this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your story, sharing all your insights and all your wisdom when it comes to movement and really kind of becoming more integrated into who we are. And I believe this is the foundation to become the greatest versions of ourselves every single day, really living on purpose, being on fire, and just like being a light for others, right? That's what it's all about. And this has been an honor to have you on. And it's, it's really important to incorporate these in our lives, man. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I prefer email. Just hit me up with an email. My email is hola, as in hello. Hola in Spanish. So hello in Spanish. Hola at pedrow.co. Send
Awesome.
me an email. Love to talk to anybody that has even or even anybody wanting to challenge my notions. Happy to talk to them.
Awesome, man. Is there anywhere else people are able to reach you, or is that about it?
That's about it. That's about it. Everything else, it's more company facing, the app, all of that. It is not exactly a communication channel, right? It's my email. My email is the way to go.
Got it, man. All right. Again, thank you so much.
All right, Anthony. Thank you so much for this time and this period. You have a great time.
You too.